I'm just coming out of something like Prime Academy or some of these other things. What are some of the things that you would suggest for people about when they're looking for that first job as a designer? What are some of the things? I mean, I know a lot of people focus on portfolio, but what are some of the other things other than just having a rich, diverse portfolio? Would you mentor somebody on helping them find that first design job?
I think that they should show the hunger that they have, the passion that they have for the industry.
How should they show? How do they show that?
Just by taking the initiative to reach out and ask to have a conversation or a cup of coffee or some advice. And then at the same time, like, send some articles about things that you think might be interesting to me. If I haven't read them, I'm really going to be interested. Mm-hmm. If I have, I'll still respond and be like, thanks for sending that. Do you want to talk about that? Mm-hmm. So just reach out and have conversations with people. Show that initiative. Also show what you can bring to the table. So you may have come from a different industry, or you might have a different background. So there's diversity in thought is as important to me as any other type of diversity.
Sure.
So I just want a different perspective on things. Mm-hmm. If you can show that will get your foot in the door. And then from there, we could talk about design work. Like, I could see that I can train people how to use software. I can train people how to, like, think about different things in different industries. Mm-hmm. But if you really have this ability to solve problems and put information in front of people that's valuable to them, mm-hmm. then I think that you can find a job. Where
do you see design and user experience in the next few years? Like, where do you see what's coming on the horizon that you're excited about?
I'm really excited about the role that organizations are starting to put UX into. So it's starting to become more of a forefront of solving problems. And if companies haven't realized that yet, they're starting to.
Right.
So I think that the terminology may blend, but at the end of the day, design thinking, even though I hate to use that word, is really becoming a big buzzword that corporations are becoming familiar with and wanting to invest in. So I think this is a great time to be a designer in general, and a lot of places don't understand the difference in titles or roles. They just think that you could throw a designer at things and problems will be solved, and that's a good first step.
Sure.
There are a lot of generalists out there that will be able to solve a lot of their problems and open their eyes to where they can add more value by adding more specialists or people that have certain backgrounds.
Yeah. For a designer that wants to be a part of that business, they really need to understand the business. They need to learn what the business does, how it makes money, who does what, who's responsible for what. They, not just completely focused on their user experience. They have to understand the pool that they're swimming in.
100%. They have to show the initiative to understand and know the business too, because people tend to think that UX designers are just advocates for users, and they don't want to take the time to tell to understand how the business works, but they want to tell the business how to do things.
Sure.
So
well, that's easier.
Yeah, exactly. So so we have to understand that the business is responsible for giving us this platform that allows us to solve these complex human problems or just do the design work that we do. Mm-hmm. Without the business, we wouldn't have jobs and we wouldn't be solving problems. Our problems would be a lot worse. Yeah. So it's interesting to think about how we really do have to understand the business to really help it, right? Yep. So we want to help our customers, and in turn, by helping our customers, we help the business, but I don't think they fully understand that sometimes. Mm-hmm. So it really is up to us to be really good at communication and bridge that gap between user needs and business goals.
If you're talking to a designer that feels that design is not given the, for lack of a better word, the respect it should have within the organization, what are some of the things that you would coach them to do in order to start building a better inroad into how important design is for an organization?
Right. So the first thing that I would do is tell them to stop talking about design and the value that it brings and start to show with work. Mm-hmm. So one of the things we did at 3M was we called it show, don't tell, which is like everybody else calls it that. It's nothing special or proprietary. But at 3M, the way the culture was, people were there 25 or 30 years, and design wasn't a thing for many of those years.
Yeah.
So if you email somebody with a question on a project, first of all, they won't know who you are. Second of all, they've got 100 other meetings. They're not going to respond.
They don't know what you do.
Right, exactly. And then you're like, hey, I'm a designer on this project that you're on. And they're like, what? We don't have designers. So, it's easier to show up with something. Like take all of the documents that you get, the PowerPoints, and put something down, a sketch, something to really get them interested and understand that you're thinking about things the same way, or that you see things maybe differently than they do. And then from there, you'll get a response like, I kind of understand what you're doing here. This doesn't make sense. This is completely wrong. That's kind of okay. Like, let's meet and talk about this. And that really opens the door. One of the other things that you can do is if you start to get resistance from people, like, why do we have this designer here? What are they doing here? Well, what you have to do is just show up, right? Bring your own seat to the table. Stalk people's calendars. Look when something's happening that you feel you should be there and show up. Just listen. If you have a chance to interject with some value, like, do that. But if not, just build that relationship. Just be there. Because you don't want to be uninvited from the next one. You want them to actually add you to the invites.
Right.
The other thing that you can do is really just show off what your capabilities are. So a lot of times designers feel like they don't get that respect. Well, put something together. Like, show us what this grand vision could be. Build it out a little bit. Make it engaging. Can you kind of throw some sketches together, make a video that kind of shows where the business could go in 5 years? Get people inspired.
We talked a bit about the future of design and where you see things going. So for designers these days, do you feel like they should be more specialized? I see titles changing all the time, focused on a mobile person versus a ERP designer or these different things. Should they be more focused solely on one area, put up the blinders, or should they be very curious in exploring all the aspects of design?
I think it's important to explore all the aspects of design. Designers are naturally curious. So it really is important to pay attention to trends as they're starting to form. A lot of them won't pan out. These titles will be gone in 6 months.
Sure.
But it doesn't hurt to try to stay ahead of that curve. At the end of the day, no matter what the title, the designer's job is to solve problems.
Yeah.
So, just explore. It doesn't hurt to learn what drives these other titles that you're seeing or roles that you see pop up. But the thing is, read that job description more than the title, and 90% of the time they're all the same.
Sure.
Or they're looking for the same thing. What's important to do is be able to communicate that you can solve problems and tell stories about problems you've solved in the past, especially ways that you've measured those results. And from there, that will kind of open those doors that you're trying to get into anyway.
How do you stay excited as a designer? What are some of the things that you do to constantly be learning and improving in your craft? Obviously, you could go and just read all the design blogs, but what are some of the other things that maybe are not deliberately one-to-one to design that get you excited, that you feel like you learn the most from?
I learn most from people. I'm inspired by people. Just having conversations with different people about anything, really. I just try to understand different perspectives about things that I have one opinion on or another, and I don't try to take a stance. And that can be said for politics, or now my new kind of foray into power sports. Like, I didn't have any previous experience in that. But the passion that these riders have, these enthusiasts, is so, like, contagious and awe-inspiring that I just want to dive in and learn about it. So really, as you talk to people and find out things they're passionate about, it makes you kind of reach into learning about other things. And design can kind of pull inspiration from anything. And right now, I've been watching Hot Ones a lot, right? So I feel like just understanding how conversations are laid out and what effects hot sauce has on the way the brain thinks, and just that's kind of interesting to me. And then just looking at the different shots that they take and understanding, like, this is culture right now, and this is what people are kind of watching, and this is a trend that's happening, and how can I apply something like this to design? Like that neon logo that lights up in the beginning that's done in Photoshop is amazing to me. So
you're going to find inspiration in the most unusual places sometimes, so you do need to constantly be exposing yourself to new things and new situations in order to get that.
Right. As much as we'd all love to just sit in our house, and especially when it's snow outside, and curl up with some really good design books, we just have to get out.
You do a lot of speaking events. You do a lot of writing. What are some of the things that you find valuable in doing that?
So when I first decided to write or speak, it was because it made me feel uncomfortable, and I wanted to become comfortable in uncomfortable situations like designers do. That's the only way to thrive as a designer, is to put yourself in a situation that you don't really feel sure of yourself and figure a way out of it. So I thought that would be the reward from speaking. Like, I'd overcome this fear or whatever, this comfort zone. But what I learned is just by talking to people and those interactions that I've had where people say they were inspired, or the ability to mentor someone or have someone come up to you and or even send an email to you and what they think was the voice or tone that you used in your talk. It's just really rewarding, and it opens up different doors. And I don't know, it's humbling at the same time, which is really like, it makes me proud to go out and talk to someone and have that effect on somebody. That email that I get is a better after a talk, that like, hey, I can really take that back to work, is like the biggest payoff you can ever get for doing anything. So just the fact that I could give back a little bit to this community that's given me so much over the years, even if I'll never be on that level of, you know, the Jared Spools or the Mike Monteros or the people that we admire and look up to. But just the fact that I can speak at the same conference as them, or have a conversation with them that's different than like just on Twitter, that also is like rewarding to me. But the fact that I can provide to someone else what they've provided for me over the years is like just full circle.
I did a talk with Jeff Godolph recently, and I asked him about how they promoted UX internally, and he talked about they did a newsletter and they sent it out, and that was their contribution, was championing and promoting the design process and the design team and what impact it was having on the business for people that weren't paying attention to what they were doing every single day. And I think people taking that initiative internally goes a 10,000, you know, it takes you so much higher than you ever were before. And
I listened to that episode on one of my new long commutes that I have, and I really liked it. And I actually wrote down as I was driving in the snow on a piece of paper with one of my Le Pens.
Wait, a piece of paper?
Yeah, I have this.
How gauche, Andy.
You know, still one of the designer's favorite tools, paper.
Yep.
I wrote down that newsletter that he had when he was in that company. I was like, I'm stealing that.
Yeah.
I am going to start a newsletter, and this is what we did last week, and this is what we're going to do coming up, and here's our team, and these are our roles and what we do. So.
Yep, and this is why you come and talk to us, and this is when you should come and talk to us, and this is when you must come and talk to us.
Right, and then if they don't pay attention, we'll just hold a lunch and learn, because everybody loves free lunch.
Yeah. Lunch and learns are great. I think they're very important, especially inside of a business when you're promoting something as new as user experience, which obviously we know it isn't that new. It's been around for quite a while, but it hasn't been as important in the business side of things for a very long time. It's been this nice to have thing. So one of the sides of user experience I wanted to ask you specifically about balance. You could do research forever. How do you, Andy, balance getting enough information to get started? How have you found the best way that works for you, where you can say, I've got enough information, it's time to get started on design?
I know traditionally they say you should talk to at least 6 to 10, 12, 8 to 12, just somewhere. We stuck with 6 most places. That's when you start to see trends and things overlap. If you talk to less than that, you might be getting different answers. And if you talk to a lot more, you start to get into customization. But I think that building process happens from like person 1. So what you want to do is start to validate these ideas that you have in the lowest fidelity possible. And things will change as you talk to more people, but you really need to put something in front of people to start to get feedback on. So I know at 3M we visited a lot of hospitals. So in 1 week we'd go to California and visit 10 different hospitals. So we would show up and observe one day.
Okay.
We'd debrief. We'd start to sketch things out. That next day we'd show up to a different customer to observe them. We'd have some sketches that we put together from the day before. And we'd say, okay, I observed you, and this is kind of what I was thinking. Now that I've sat down with you, I don't think this makes sense, but can you sit down and look at this and tell me, like, are we going in the right direction with this? And then from there, the next hospital would be a more refined sketch.
Yeah.
Then eventually it would be a prototype that they could click through instead of just looking at these terrible drawings on the Post-it notes on the back of my laptop. But really it's about, when it's the right time to launch something. I mean, you'll start to see that your feedback is becoming the same. Like, yeah, that's great. If I could do, and you start to build the roadmap with that too, right? There are things